Okay, it's about 4 o'clock on Monday, and I have done my first corner by hand, and it came out okay. It took a long time, probably at least a couple of hours. The first thing I did, of course, was use the Dremel to route the channel up to about there, and the channel up to about there. And then I had to cut this whole part by hand, which is pretty hard to do. I think it's harder to do in the spruce because the grain of the spruce kind of fights you. Especially, for example, when you're cutting this direction, for example, down here, this direction, every millimeter or so, you're hitting a hard grain line, and it kind of stops the knife. So you got to go boom, 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 kind of like that. The dark grain lines are the harder wood, and the white part is the soft. And so you can't just slice through. You have to kind of just do it very, very slowly and very lightly until you get about 2 millimeters down into the spruce, which is kind of hard to do cleanly. So you first draw it with the pencil, which I think I showed. Did I show a picture of that? Can't remember. I might not have. I should have. You draw it with a pencil, continuing from where you routed. And then you cut it. I use this. I like that blade better than the standard number 11 X-Acto blade because it's shorter, it's more stiff. The number 11 X-Acto blade is about twice as long, and it's thinner, but it's more flexible, so it flexes, which sometimes makes it harder to control. So again, the first thing you do is draw it out, do some measurements, then you cut out the channel, trying to go continuously from where the router stopped, which was about here, and trying to do the same width of a channel, which is tricky, just with the knife. It might be easier on the maple back because that's a hard wood. Where the grain, like on the spruce, won't stop you every millimeter or so. So you cut it. The first thing I did was measure, it's about 1/3 over, and you cut a line, and that's for the bee sting. And then you draw this line and the other side of the channel, and then you draw this one to match it. And the trickiest thing with the spruce, it kind of crumbles when you cut it. You can't just cut down cleanly and then pick it out. This is the pick. This is what you use to kind of pick out the wood from the channel after you've cut the sides of the channel. But again, the spruce kind of crumbles, and sides of the walls aren't necessarily perfectly vertical because of that difficulty in cutting spruce. But you kind of dig out the wood until you think it's deep enough and check it with the purfling. The purfling is a little over 2 millimeters tall, maybe 2.25 or 2.5 millimeters tall. And then what you do, the first piece that you fit is this piece with the bee sting. So you have a long piece of black at the end before you cut the white and the short black. And then you kind of jam that up there and you fit that in. And then you got to cut, you got to bend this one. This one you don't have to bend because it's so slight. You just kind of moisten it and bend it with your finger. This one, though, the C-bout is much more curved, so you do have to use the bending iron to bend that because there's more of a curve. And so you bend that, and then you have to use, I use a chisel. At first I was trying to use this, but then the chisel seems to do a better job. For example, there's an example. That one cracked, but you're kind of slicing, and you have to slice it so you have a particular width of the black and the white and the other black lines. And that's kind of tricky. It's kind of trial and error because you want it to meet and match the other piece. Okay, and then after you've got them both fitting, you basically just jam the corner in. You leave it there. You don't take it out. In fact, you don't put glue in there. You don't really need to, because if you did, it would make the wood swell up, and then it might not fit cleanly as you have it fitted here. So basically you do glue from, say, about here. You lift this part up and you glue under this part. And then as you push this piece in, you're kind of pushing it, but also using a little hammer, which I have here. And you're kind of hammering, kind of going like, you know, imagine my finger was the hammer, kind of hammering, pushing. So you're kind of pushing the glue as well as hammering, pushing the purfling forward, because you want to make sure that that end keeps its position at the point. And so you do the same thing here. You don't glue right up there. You lift it up, and then you glue from here probably up to there. And you do the same thing. You're kind of hammering and pushing this direction. So you're pushing the glue that you put in the channel along. So eventually it kind of seeps into there. And so I didn't do too badly on this one. We'll see when it dries, and tomorrow I'll level it down with a little gouge and see how that bee sting looks. When you first put a piece of purfling in, it kind of gets smashed. And so, places like this or even the bee sting, they look thicker than they ultimately will when you level the purfling down to the wood, hopefully. And it looks clean after you've used a gouge to level it down to the wood. The way I did this bee sting was that the top of the bee sting is, you measure down 3 millimeters and draw a line, and then 2 millimeters beyond that. So the 3 millimeters is kind of the tip of the bee sting. That's where you start the cut for the bee sting. It looks like it's going beyond the line here, but it isn't. And then the 2 millimeters beyond is where the point of the rest of the purfling begins. And so we'll see. I tried a different method this time. Before I used to have a big problem with this spruce wood, this corner, breaking, because I was using a different, I didn't know the particular technique that I use today. And that works better. Didn't break any corner. So we'll see tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to let this dry and set. And then I will shave it down to the wood, and we'll see how it looks. But that's the first one. I'm going to do more practice. I have 3 more corners I could do if I want. Okay. So I don't see how somebody does a whole violin just purfling slot just by hand. It's just too hard.